Hey folks, it's Tom, your frugal prepper. We got us the 2013 Dodge Avenger.
Avenge me! Avenge me!
It's been several different colors. It's been red, it's painted black, it's had a blue fender on it as well. It's had some struts put in it at some point. They didn't put, oh no, they put all the nuts on them. Okay, I thought that one was missing. Has an intermittent stalling issue. It will just stall, but it will always like to pull over, put it in park and restart it, and it drives. I don't want to mess with this too much. I see this wiring harness down here is all ate up. It's just things to recognize that wiring harness is ate into, right? So that could be a problem. We're gonna check it. We're gonna scan it for codes. I'm just kind of taking a look around. It's got the duct taped air cleaner. It looks like it has an intake air temperature sensor, and this is probably a speed density engine, not a mass airflow engine. Most of the Chryslers are. That's got some tape over it. She definitely has a coolant leak. I can smell it. Maybe some evaporative emissions too. Not causing the stalling issue though. Andrew baby had been around the block a time or two. We're gonna see what we can find. Let me plug the scan tool in and scan her for some codes. Okay, so this thing probably has a lot of codes in it. It has a wheel speed, traction control, light when I pulled it in the garage, so it's got a bad wheel speed sensor probably. But we don't care about any of that. We're after why is it stalling, and then it'll restart. So we're going to take a look in here and see if it has any codes. The check engine light's not currently on. But when you're not dealing with OBD, you're dealing with a factory scan tool, you can see the old fault codes. And so we'll do a DTC information. Oh, crankshaft position sensor. Intermittent. It's stored. I have to see if this will fall back to a cam. Some cars do fall back to cams, and so that might not cause a stall, but it might because it says it's intermittent, which means it's probably getting the signal, not getting the signal, probably causing it to like putter a little bit before it stalls out, probably, as it's trying to figure out, am I getting a signal? No, I'm not. Now I'm getting one. No, I'm not. It's trying to switch back and forth, and then it dies. So I'll bet you that it's in that wiring that's chafed, probably. So let's see if there's any freeze frame data on this, and we'll just go to our first freeze frame. Oh yeah, we got some, baby. We got some. So AC clutch, the AC was turned off, the AC switch was off, the actual torque was -20, so it's like they were decelerating. They were slowing down. Ambient air temperature sensor 68, probably about right this time of year. App 1 accelerator pedal position sensor voltage should be about double on one as it is on the other, and it is 0.72, 0.145 or 1.45. And accelerator pedal position percent, 12%, and barometric pressure 14.8. I don't know if this has a baro sensor that's separate, or if it just uses the map sensor before the engine starts to read the baro pressure. Some Dodges do that, especially on these speed densities. So we're going to see. I guess what I'm going to do is pull up a wiring diagram and some information and look at what kind of sensor that is, what wires it uses, where those wires run, do they run through that harness that's all chewed up, and then we'll inspect the harness. I think that's where I'm going to go with it. That's the biggest clue I have right now. Could it be something else? Yes, but that's pretty sure thing, I think. So I'm going to go with that, irregardless of whether it actually caused the stall, that needs to be fixed, because it could cause a stall. So, and we're having stalls, so I don't know. Let me pull up the information. All right, so my crank sensor, it lives on the back of the engine block by the transmission, and you have to remove a heat shield to get to it. It doesn't seem like an impossible job, but we're gonna check the wiring. The Mitchell On Demand does say there's a lot of people that have intermittent stall problems, and the fix was fixing the crankshaft position sensor. So I'm leaning that way. But I got a 5-volt supply that's pink and yellow, a dark brown and gray that goes to the powertrain control module on 88, and this one goes to the PCM on pin 85, and this one goes on pin, oh, this is light brown is the signal, or is it brown, light green? Okay. And it's on pin 86. So 86, 87, 88. So the pink yellow wire, I did open up the wiring harness and just look at this. There's one wire that's a yellow wire that has some bare exposed copper, but it's not corroded or anything, so I'll seal that up. So that's the only wire it appears to rub through. And we have this, and I have a wire piercing probe on my pink yellow wire to see if I have a 5-volt ref there. And I do have a 5-volt ref. I'm not going to test light it, but I think the 5-volt ref would be good because it feeds a few other sensors as well. So now we got a clip on the signal wire and just see what we're reading on the scope for a camshaft signal. And if I can find that blue-gray one down in here, I'll probe it and check it for a good ground with a test light. And we'll just see if we're getting a signal, if it looks like a full signal, but it's intermittent, right? So I don't know if it's happening right now. That's the problem on these intermittents. It's hard a lot of times to confirm the diagnosis. I might have to tell them this one's not confirmed because it won't do it unless I can make it do it and get it to not start or die while I'm measuring the crankshaft position sensor. But since it always restarts, that's not promising. But I want to see if the square wave looks good on the scope anyway. So let me probe into the white wire and hook that up to the scope. There's my proof. So I went ahead and I just pulled apart that connector. I back probed the gray, light blue, and the gray, light green. The gray, light blue, or brown, light blue, and brown, light green. Brown, light blue is the crankshaft position sensor hooked with this blue trace. If we look here, if this is a holodeck sensor, I mean, it almost looks like it could be a variable reluctance, except it doesn't increase. As I rev the engine, this doesn't get bigger. So that tells me it's definitely holodecked. And it would be because it's a 3-wire sensor with a 5-volt ref. But it should be switching that to 5 volts. Right? And we have a 2-volt. So there should be 5 volts of difference between these two. We're not even hitting 2. We're about hitting 2. So that sensor is right on the edge of life, right? It's barely registering, so it's cutting out intermittently. So now this is supposed to see 8 invalid readings from the crankshaft position sensor. Then it will switch over to the camshaft position sensor. Well, so I want to check the camshaft position sensor because it is cutting out. So I've back probed it here, tested it here, and I'm going to test it from here now. It's hooked up to my red. So we'll take my red. Hang on a second here. Let me hook this red up to the scope. As you can see here, we're right at that 2 volts, so that's 4 volts. And that's a whole lot better of a signal. That might be just a tad bit low, but it's a whole lot better. So what we have is a Hall effect sensor that's weak. And so what usually happens is those Hall effect sensors get hot, they heat up, and then they lose even more voltage, right? And then all of a sudden you have it cut out, it switches to the cam. The camshaft position sensor might be weak here too. It might get weaker as it warms up. Maybe it's not getting a reading on the camshaft, it can't switch to it, boom, engine dies. I found on a lot of these Chryslers and TMs too, but Chryslers especially, whichever one it's running on currently, right? If it's running the engine off of the camshaft position sensor, it won't set a camshaft position sensor code. Only if it sees the invalid camshaft signal while it's running on crank, or vice versa. They just won't set a code for that. So that makes me think that maybe I'm just gonna keep watching it and see it's starting to get just a little lower occasionally. So I think that's what's going on. I think we have a bad crank sensor that's really bad, and then it's cutting out and going over the camshaft position sensor, and it's dropping out. That voltage is just dropping below the threshold to where the computer can read it. So it's still putting out a signal, but it's just getting down there below the 1.5 volts where a swing, positive, negative, where the computer can interpret the signal. And so then that makes sense. It starts sputtering because it's not reading the right signals. It's like, oh, what happened? Loses track, shuts down the engine. And then if you let it cool for a minute, or maybe even just restart it, it'll fire right back up and run again until this gets lower. So I'm going to make the call. This needs a cam and a crank sensor. And we'll go from there.